I am Michael Jackson Hymos with Santa Monica's Morgan-Wixson Theater, and tonight we have our third community discussion. Today's discussion is entitled Casting Colorblind versus Color Conscious. Before we get started, let me tell you that during the presentation, if you want to ask questions of our panelists, you can press the Q&A button on the control strip at the bottom of your screen, and just type up your questions, and the panelists will try to get to all of them. Also wanted to let you know that our upcoming schedule of community discussions, on September 4th, we have Initiative for Actors of Color, Hair, Makeup, and Body Presentation, moderated by Janae Thompson. On September 25th, we have a community discussion entitled Nuance and Context, Evolving Our Approach to Social Justice in Theater, moderated by tonight's moderator, Marc Antonio Pritchett. And then on October 16th, our community discussion is called Code Switching, moderated by Andre Jackson. Also want to let our members know that on those Fridays that we don't have community discussions, we have our Friday night readings, which all our members are invited to attend. If you would like to join us and are not a member, you can check out how to be a member by going to our website, morgan-wixson.org, joining for the small fee of $35, $60 for families. And then you can join our readings on Friday nights as well. Real quick, I do want to say thank you to all the folks that made tonight possible. Really appreciate it. So tonight's discussion is casting colorblind versus color conscious. You know, growing up in theater, the term colorblind casting, I think it was understood to mean that the director didn't look at, see, or consider race when casting a show. I've heard the term all throughout my life in theater, as I'm sure many of you have as well. But what does the term really mean? I think it was intended to get a more diverse and inclusive theater. But that's the question we are looking at tonight, with a panel of talented actors joining us tonight. And tonight's community discussion is moderated by director, actor, musician, and stunt performer, Marc Antonio Pritchett. There he is. Nice to see you, Marc. Thanks for being here. So let's introduce our panelists for tonight. We have Anthony Cloyd, Keenon Hooks, Stephen Flowers, Veronica Roy, and Zakiya Young. I love this panel because we have actors, we have an equity actor, we have a choreographer, director, actor. Oh my God, did I mention Stephen Flowers? Oh, is he there?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, there he is, thank you. There we go, that's the screen I wanted. And so we have a nice, diverse group of people with different experiences, and I can't wait to hear your panel. So Marc, I turn it over to you, and thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you. All right, let's just jump right in. Maybe we'll start with Anthony. So just, we got your name. How many years have you been in the business? And tell us one fun fact about you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Anthony, as you know. I've been in the business now for about 8 years. That's when I first started working professionally. And within that time, I got my degree in drama from UC Irvine. Yeah, I'm a stage actor, I'm a film and TV actor, and most recently a commercial actor. Yeah, I currently now work, my day job is working for Kaiser Permanente Educational Theater. So I'm doing theater on behalf of Kaiser Permanente in under-resourced communities. So we're really seeing the effects of racism every day, and really lucky to be a part of a company that is addressing that directly. So yeah, it's a little bit about me. Oh, and fun thing, I got the chance to live in China for about 8 months. So yeah, super fun.
Nice, nice. Let's see, how about Stephen?
Oh, hello. So yes, Stephen Flowers. I've been acting, not professionally, but I've been acting for forever, since elementary school, and ever since I moved out to LA. Though I moved out here for professional reasons, within a couple of months I was feeling that acting bug again, and I've been acting at the Morgan-Wixson Theater ever since 2008. So yeah, so 12 years there, so that's been great. But professionally, I work in digital advertising. So that's been cool. And as far as a fun fact, in about 2 weeks will mark my 13th anniversary in LA. So, woo.
Nice. Veronica, you're up.
I double click that unmute button. Hi everyone, as the screen says, my name is Veronica Roy. I am an action actor, writer, and producer. I have been pursuing this career full-time for 7 years, of which 6 of those years have been here in LA. And a fun fact about me would be that I own 5 throwing knives, 4 quarterstaffs, and 6 swords, of which one of them is a lightsaber. And I know how to use all of them.
For the win. All right. Keenon.
Hey guys, Keenon Hooks here. I've been working in the business professionally for the past 11 years. I work as a director, choreographer, and performer still. I'm both a member of Actors Equity and a member of SDC, which is the Stage Directors and Choreographers Union. I got my start actually choreographing at the Morgan-Wixson back in 2010. That was my first full production show, and actually how I met a couple of these guys here before going off and doing other things. A fun fact about myself is that I also work as a professional merman doing events, private events, and different things. I'm sure there's a lot of questions of what does that mean, and that's something we could talk about at another time, but I swim in tanks, I do ocean shoots, I do all kinds of stuff, and it's truly something I never thought I'd be doing, and I love it to death, and it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Zakiya.
Hello. I'm Zakiya Young. I'm a Broadway baby. I have been working long enough to know to never answer that question of how long have you been in the business. I play 25 to 35. Actually, speaking of mermaids, I made my Broadway debut in the original company of The Little Mermaid. So we have to talk about that, Keenan. I am also a voiceover artist. I've made most of my career in musical theater playing non-traditionally Black roles. I also do plays, and I've been in LA for about 3 years, and I didn't think I'd like it, but here I am. And I met Michael through his husband, Andre.
Awesome. All right. So first question, I guess, is to define our subject today. So this is going to go to you, Stephen, and then we can discuss, everyone chime in. What do the terms colorblind casting and color conscious casting mean to you?
Absolutely. So when I think of colorblind, I think of, as when Michael was saying earlier in the introduction, just throwing it out the window, saying whoever walks in, we're not looking at color or anything. Anybody can play any of the roles in here. We're not going to base this off of color for these particular roles, which has its space. It addresses certain needs, but then we have separately color conscious, where we acknowledge the fact that, and I use that word specifically, acknowledges the fact that ethnicity ain't going away. This is something that you see on screen. It's something you see on stage, in person, what have you, that we have different ethnicities out there. We have different races out there. I don't like using the term race all the time, but that exists. So let's be conscious of that. Let's be aware of the fact that we have people of different ethnicities who are trying out for these roles, and how they're going to be portrayed in this particular role, or on stage in this particular scene, and what have you. We need to make sure that we're conscious of that fact.
Anyone have anything they want to chime in there? Does that definition fit with everyone else? Yes. All right.
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I first think of colorblind casting, it makes me sort of think of sort of the way that people use the term colorblind in society on a normal everyday basis. When and it kind of gives me some negative feelings, because when you hear somebody goes, I don't even see your color. I don't even see that you're Black. You know what I mean? When we all know that that isn't actually true or actually the case, you know? I think the intention of the term colorblind casting is pure in that it's wanting to be like, hey, you know, we're not even going to look at the color, we're going to cast based on how the person auditions or how they feel. But I feel that it doesn't quite go far enough, because what the reality is we live in a racist society, right? And so because of that, I believe addressing racial inequity has to be consciously and directly and intentionally addressed. If there's a group that's overrepresented in terms of media, in terms of stage, I think that if we just left it to colorblindness, purely because of the numbers statistically, that group will continue to be the dominantly represented. So I think color conscious casting, at least in my mind and in my definition, would mean going intentionally and seeing where are the inequities and how we can make things more equal. That makes sense.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Anybody? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to move on to 2. Good start. Has your career been adversely affected by either practice? If so, tell us about it. Veronica?
Yes. So yes, my career has been affected by that, which I'm sure every one of us can say that. But my story I could think of is when I first moved out here to LA, I booked a national car commercial within the first year of me living up here. And it was the very first audition I had ever gone on with my agent. I was over the moon, ecstatic that they're like, "You're cast, it's yours." I was calling everybody, like friends, family, to let them know that I'd booked this national commercial. And then the next day I received a phone call saying, from my agent, saying the casting director called them and said the client decided to go in a different direction, and let her know it's nothing that she did whatsoever. The client just wanted to go in a different direction. And I was just like crushed and heartbroken. I was like, oh, okay. So like a year after that, I was sitting and watching something online, and then a commercial popped up, and it was that car commercial. And everything they did in that commercial is exactly what I did in the audition. Nothing changed except they cast a completely white family. And all it was a new mom and dad bringing their little baby home from the hospital and putting the baby in the car and then driving home. And they chose a completely white cast instead. And it's like, I don't understand. It could have gone mixed if you wanted to change it up. Because I mean, I'm mixed. Like I have a white father and a black mother, and like, so baby would end up looking brown. Like, so yeah, that was my very first experience professionally having this topic sort of like affect me directly.
Oh no, I've had so many of those, as we talked about kind of in our pre-talk about this. Maybe one of the biggest ones was having a shot at in a high-profile theater. As you mentioned, I spent a lot of my life, studying sword work and classics, and it was a chance to play Tybalt. And yeah, well, Tybalt is the bad guy in the thing, so we feel like it. So it's like, it's one of those times when the concept of color conscious, whose entire goal is to help us out, actually took an opportunity away from me, because, oh, if you play this, people are going to look at us cross-eyed and we're going to get canceled because you got to play a highly trained sword fighter in Shakespeare. Like, we're going to dive deeper into this going forward, but ooh, that well is deep for me. Anyone else have any experiences on that line, or from either side, by the way?
Yes. Like I said, I've kind of made my musical theater career through non-traditional casting. Like Audra McDonald, I saw her, I heard her, and I was like, oh, there's a place for me, because I was classically trained as a vocalist. As amazing as that was, it actually makes it harder for me now to be seen for the Black shows on Broadway. I was not seen for Hamilton or Motown until they were casting the national tour. And it was this weird thing of, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but when the industry perceives you as not Black enough, so it's like you're, all of us see, yeah, y'all know. So it's like, as grateful as I am to have been able to play these very white roles, Lois Lane, Betty Haynes, you know, gosh, so many. I didn't get to actually play a Black role until I started doing plays. And then I got to play Aida regionally, but it's such a layered conversation, clearly.
Oh, love it, love it, love it. Anybody else on that front? Either one of those practices got you?
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in on that because, you know, it can also be seen in a different way. I mean, so I worked in the business as a dancer for years before I started, you know, actually choreographing and directing. And, you know, I would get into some shows where I would be the only person of color. I mean, it would happen 90% of the time. I was literally the only person of color. And, you know, depending on the show, i.e., let's say it's White Christmas, which those people that know my career, that show has like been most of my career. I've done that show more times than I can count. And, you know, when you're in a show like that, it can be, you know, different when you're asked to portray things in a certain way, as if my own experiences don't matter as for who I am as a person of color. Whereas I'm like, oh, well, that choice might have been a little too ethnic, or, you know, it's quite the opposite side of not being Black enough, but being too Black to blend in with everyone else who's not a person of color. So it can be a little bit detrimental, both on your mental state and how do you, as an actor, you have to pull different tools and do different things to like, okay, well, I'm going to do this and we're doing the same thing, but because I'm Black, even if I don't feel like I'm too Black, that's what they're seeing, adding to whatever choices I'm making. And I'm talking about ensemble work. I'm not even talking about like a major role, you know what I mean? But then that also does come into play in roles I've done as well. But my main focus is just talking about me being a dancer in the business. So, you know, it can go on so many different sides, but that's just what I want to chime in on that.
There's so much nuance to this, which is really the point. Like I have kind of 3 career paths with, you know, acting, directing, music stuff, and fight stuff. And the one that's been most affected has been fight stuff, because what is a stunt person usually? They're like the bad guy who gets beat up by the hero, right? So people trying to save me from bad imagery, save me out of being able to pursue my career. And when I came here, that was the thing where if I had to look at what I had the shiniest things, like I was an internationally ranked sport fighter, like I came in here with, you know, I didn't have a credit to my name acting wise or singing wise, you know what I mean? Like that was the thing that I thought would really drive, but it was really the one that most got hampered by people. And it's really sad because it's people who I think are trying to do the right thing. And that's the worst. That's when the knife really turns a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say, just to piggyback on that. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that, at least in my experience, I haven't always been in the room, so I don't know exactly the reasons why I have or have not been cast. Sometimes I've thought, well, maybe they cast me because I'm Black specifically. Like they looked around like, we need a Black person, and like I got the part. So like there are times when I've been like, hey, this is to my advantage, actually. You know what I mean? Especially with like ensemble work. The problem that I have had sometimes is I think, especially with selections of shows that theaters do, the Black characters or the person of color characters are written very one-dimensionally, right? Mm. And so what is that saying? What is the media saying when it presents characters that are one-dimensional? It's saying that this culture is one-dimensional. You know what I mean? There are Black people who are loud and dance and this, and there are Black people who are shy. And, you know, but people of color don't get that sort of multi-dimensionality represented on stage. And so, yes, you should have played Tipple, not because it's a bad character, but because it should show a Black person can be multidimensional. You know what I mean? So
also in the same vein, I've always found it fascinating that, like, in terms of casting, like if we're trained in all these different accents, how often do you think you're going to get called in to be Irish or to be British? Never mind the fact that there are Black people in existence all across the world, born and raised, that is their natural accent. But when you see British or European or whatever in the breakdown, we're not getting called in. Like, and if we try to do these accents, they're like, oh, don't fake that accent. And it's like, how many British actors play American on television right now?
Yeah.
I don't understand why one's okay and the other is not, because we're all actors, and also that is, like you were saying, one-dimensional. And it's like, no, we're not just in Africa, we're not just in tribes, we're like from Berlin, like with like, or having German accents or a Slavic backgrounds or whatever. We are Irish and like have a bad temper and get into bar fights because that's what we know. Like representation all across the board, basically.
I wish I could just take that and frame it someplace. And can I say really quick, I see you, Stephen, like just warm and fuzzies, like this has been the most awesome thing, this conversation that has happened this whole week. This has been kind of a week of battling the system a little bit. And oh my goodness, do I enjoy this conversation. Stephen, please.
Yeah. No, of course, and I echo your sentiment, Mark. It's just good to get all of this out. But to your point, Veronica, specifically, there have been times when I've held myself back from auditioning for something because I knew I was going to be pigeonholed as a specific character. I knew, but like I didn't know what was going to, Anthony, to your point, I didn't know what was actually going to happen in the casting room, but I held myself back because I was like, yeah, you have a cast of 20, and it specifically says that this one cast member is Black. So if I audition for this, it's most likely going to be me geared to this, especially being in an audition pool that is largely white. So it just, and especially if there's another part in that play that I'd love to play, it would be so fun to get that one. But it sucks having that pigeonhole, and not only in my own head, but I've heard other people like specifically reach out to me and say, oh, you'd be great at this particular part. And it takes me 2 seconds to realize, oh yeah, they're talking about the one Black role in that particular show, not Romeo or Juliet or anything like that. It's specifically this one role. And it's disheartening to be pigeonholed like that.
Yeah, guys, good.
Can I chime in right quick?
Yeah, please do.
I feel terrible. I've been like all over the place this week, so I haven't gotten a chance to really vibe with y'all yet. So I'm feeling the flow of the convo. But I do have to give a shout out to some of the casting directors in New York. I can't speak as much for LA, but I will say that Jim Carnahan casting, Tara Rubin casting, as well as Stuart Whitley casting, they've called me in for some roles where I look at the breakdown and I'm like, come on, y'all. Like Carnahan called me in for Roman Holiday for a Sicilian woman. And I was like, now look, I know there are some dark-skinned Italians and I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, I still went in, I did my research, I did my accent, but even I was a little bit like, now y'all know I'm not gonna get this. But at the same point, it's like I had to get out of that mindset of they're not going to cast me because they have been. So it's like the cost sometimes is that, okay, well, they do only see you as the non-Black person who can play all the roles, even though you're clearly Black. I would love to see on the flip side, like just letting us be all of the things, even those who bring us in for those non-traditional roles, bring me in for some of the Black stuff too. And again, I'm still getting to know LA because it took me a minute to get started. But I did want to give a shout out to some of the casting offices that I know are doing great work.
Nice, love it. Okay, well, this actually dovetails pretty cleanly into the next question. Is anyone, are we good on that one? We're going deeper as we keep going? Okay, here we go. So this one I'll head to Keenan first. So we've kind of acknowledged that these two strategies kind of have pluses and minuses, right? They often, hey, give, but they take at the same time. So if we delve deeper, what is the core problem that these problems, what is the core problem that these practices are meant to solve, right? And is there a better way? So clearly, there's a disconnect somewhere in there. So Keenan?
Yeah, no, I think that these practices are supposed to show that there's inclusivity within the business and the industry. And that kind of gets misconstrued at different places. And, we all take things differently from all genders, races, and everything. And so I think it's trying to find the middle ground of how can we make these actually effective and better. And one of those things I think is always having people in your corner. I mean, kind of like Zakiya said with casting directors, I've been blessed to have an amazing agent that will submit me and get me seen for things where I'm like, are they gonna really cast me for that though? You know, like, and it's been really great on that front for me that I've had the opportunity to be seen for stuff where I think generally people like, I wouldn't even have thought to go in for that role. But what I think is one of the most important things that we can do is get more people of color behind the casting table, on the director's table, as a choreographer. I mean, I'm blessed that I am a working director choreographer in the business. And there's plenty more of us out there, but you know, getting us behind the casting table, not just for the ethnic shows. Like, I'm not just going to be there for directing Ragtime or In the Heights or Once on This Island or all of our shows that we know and we love. But getting me behind the table, let me cast My Fair Lady. Let me cast, you know, all these other shows that in my background, I am a classically trained dancer. You know, I studied Fosse for years, you know, and yes, I do hip hop and modern jazz funk and all that stuff, but that does not define me. So, and I've also been blessed to kind of start on that front with different companies that have taken those chances on me and hiring me to choreograph or direct shows that are not the ethnic shows. So let's bring in the ethnic director or choreographer. But I don't think that's done enough in this business. And I think if we did have more of us out there behind the table, we would truly be able to have the more color conscious casting because we would accept those that come into the room. I mean, a good example of that is I did one of the most recent productions of White Christmas that I did. I did it here in LA at one of our top regional theaters, and half of my dancers were of color. And you don't see that in White Christmas, like, ever, you know? Zakiya, she's like, no, I know, you know? And I don't want it to feel like it's like, oh, they have this ethnic choreographer, so he's only gonna hire ethnic people. I'm like, no, they showed up, they brought it, and they got the job. You know, I wasn't looking at, oh, let me make this as diverse as possible. It was like, I was truly like, oh, this person brings something good, this person brings something good. And I think that if more of us thought that way on that side of the table, that we truly have a more diverse industry. But we kind of get blindsided by what's the right thing? What should I do? Is it okay to cast them as this? You know, is that going to say the wrong thing? And, you know, and it just gets caught up in that aspect in the wrong way.
I totally agree with that. And I also feel like something else that will help our industry greatly is having a lot more advocates for us as well. I am all for getting more of us like in the seats of power and being able to like give more opportunities, but it can't just be up to us getting in the rooms. Like, we're all in this together, so let's all treat it like we're all in this together instead of just it's their fight, they'll deal with it type of thing. Because like we're making headway, but we'll go a whole lot faster if like the rest of the industry basically helps us carry the weight of it. So it's like evenly distributed so that we're like all intentionally giving an opportunity to tell the story in the best way possible to whoever the best person is. Like, you see an actor, I don't care what you look like. Did I believe you? Did you sing to my soul? Did you make me cry? I don't care what you look like. You fit. You're going into like for a chemistry read. So like, yeah, we just need more of those.
Amen.
Yeah, I would say I think the core problem that these approaches are trying to fix is racial inequity. I think both on stage, in casting, I think in the types of shows that audiences see. I think historically, this country has served white audiences, right? Whether even putting Black people or people of color into shows, it's for the entertainment of white audiences historically, right? And so we're getting into a point where we're like, okay, there are people of color who also come to see these shows, who also want to see their stories told in a very truly representative way, you know? And I think the only way that we can address the inequity is to consciously talk about it. I mean, it's, you know, kind of repeating what I said earlier, but it's to consciously look at it. It's to look at, number one, look at these characters who, I think when you also think of conscious casting, it's like, look at characters who have been written as Black and probably should stay Black or Asian or, you know, any other person of color, and opening up characters that are historically white, because white characters have been sort of written the most multi-dimensionally. And so it's like a multi-pronged approach to like creating equity. If we really want to see just as many groups represented on stage and behind the camera and behind scenes, we have to try, because I think racism is pervasive because color blindness often means you act like it's not there. It's like being in a house that's on fire and you're like, I don't see any fire. It's there. And if you don't address it, it will continue. Not addressing it allows it to continue, you know?
Totally agree with all these points. And also, I think us as Blackers being radically honest and open, I think that's key in this moment. I did a Pass the Mic with a white actress, Kelly O'Hara, Tony Award winner. And it was incredible because as I didn't even know her, I knew of her. And as we got to know each other, there was so much stuff she just had no idea about. And I said, I can't hold you accountable for something you didn't know was happening. So, and she was like, yeah, tell it to me real. So I told her, I had no filter. It was so weird because I think we can all agree that unless it's a family member, like that's white, we usually keep those conversations within Black spaces. But now is the time, like white folks are saying, we're here, we want to know. And it's like, all right, now we have to get comfortable with saying these things and not trying to like make it better, but standing in our truth and saying, like I was telling Kelly, I was like, you have power. If you see an all white creative team, when you're negotiating, you can start to say, why don't we have a person of color behind the table? When I get there, I'm surely gonna do that. But I was like, you know, the people in power can really change the whole situation. And I think it's encouraging white women. I feel like my ministry is white women because white women are very powerful, very powerful. And I was like, you don't need our permission to speak out against racism. Just because you don't experience it personally, it's wrong. Have you experienced sex slavery? No. And yet you're fighting against it. So do the same for us.
Absolutely. Zakiya, you bring up a great point specifically around advocacy. I recently had somebody come up to me just to ask to sit down for a couple of hours just to talk about my experiences in theater and my experiences in casting, any issues that that person might have exacerbated through their own decisions, things along those lines. And I just laid it out as I've seen it. Like here's what I can educate you on as far as what I specifically have gone through. And I hope that this helps you on your journey as far as doing the work. Because I can't give you everything because I don't represent all Black people. And that's one of the main things that we make sure that I told any of my friends who have asked me any of those questions. But I will always be here to help out and answer where I can those questions that you might have specifically as it relates to what I've seen, what I've experienced. Because like I said, I want to make sure that we're all growing together. I don't want anyone failing because of the lack of something I could have given. So.
Gotcha. Ooh, oh, please go ahead.
I was like, I also feel like it's also giving off the prerequisite of creating a safe space for the people that have questions, but they don't want to be seen as a racist, or they're afraid to ask the question. And it's like, unless you ask me, like, you're not gonna know. You're just gonna come up with ideas in your own head. And that's those are conversations I've been having since I was young. Because again, coming from a multiracial like family and in the military, so moved every 3 years. So I was the new kid every place I went, and oftentimes the only person of color in a room full of white friends. So like oftentimes I would have these random conversations that would come up. And what always fascinated me is whenever the topic of race came up, everyone would look at me. And I'm like, okay, what? So much like you said, I am not the representative like for everybody. I can just tell you about my experience. But at the very least, if somebody approaches me with the question and like they're kind of stumbling on how to ask it, so like how do I in a PC way diplomatically ask the question, I just go, just ask the question. Like stop tiptoeing around the question and just ask me what you want to know. And then that ends up opening up like the conversation and the dialogue. And like sometimes it just comes from ignorance because they grew up in a place where like everybody looked like everybody else. I had one friend ask me, if you cut a Black person's hair, will it grow back? And I was, after I was done laughing, I was like, yes, because all human. Next question. So just stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just being able to.
Veronica,
Yeah,
can I ask, you know, I've had, especially after like George Floyd died, I was having a lot of white people asking me, like, how do I solve them? Fix it for me. And like, I just want everyone to really be careful about putting the onus on the Black person to fix it for you. You know what I mean? There's, degrees on on this stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like, maybe you can ask, you know, hey, how can I show up for you? But I think really putting it on the own, like, give me it was a lot of like, what do I give my money to? Like, money will be the one-time fix of racism. You know what I mean? It's really, again, a multi-pronged approach. I'm just curious if that's what you felt as well.
No, totally agree. Because that, again, falls into the standpoint of, like, not one answer is going to fix everything, because there are so many situational things that it's just like this one specific incident will have a completely different result and response from everything else. But, like, I think the very core of it all is, like, we just got to come at it from, like, look, I don't know everything. Let's just figure this out together. And, like, and I'm open to admitting I messed up. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know. But now I'm aware. Let's do active steps to fix this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and I'd like to add on to that. Google is a thing. Google exists. So I think it's like, I feel like I was in a predominantly white sorority. That's a whole other thing. I did an interview about that. It's on my Instagram. It's amazing. And my sorority, Tri Delta, has done amazing things with acknowledging racism and eradicating it. But I want for white folks to stop being scared of offending Black people when you want to help. That's the thing that's tricky, because I'm like, now wait, as a general rule, people have said some crazy stuff without any fear of hurting my feelings. And yet, when it's something to help me as a Black person, there's this timidity and all of a sudden this fear of, well, what if I hurt your feelings? What if Black people get mad at me? And I'm like, here's the thing. Don't come in as an expert on the Black experience. Do your research, come with specific questions, but do the work, because we know how the power structure is. I have seen white women get so many amazing changes in their communities, in their schools, so much stuff. So that's why I like to call it out. I was raised in a predominantly white area, less than 1% Black, in a school of over 2,000. So I'm like, Black folks, we basically have to study white people to survive, right? We have gone through so many things, and we have gotten our feelings hurt many times. So I say this with all the love in my heart. Allies, yes, you might get your feelings hurt because you might say something that's a little bit crazy, but be okay with that. Acknowledge it, because you didn't know. We're not going to hold it against you. We might call it out. We might be like, I had a sorority sister ask me if Black people had an extra muscle in their leg that made them run faster. And she really meant it. And I said, I'm so glad you asked me that and nobody else. Here's why that's terrible. So yes, I had to call her out. Yes, her feelings were probably a little bit hurt, but I had to educate her. So I think that we need to kind of remember what we're fighting for. It's really not about feelings. We're fighting for lives. We're fighting for equality. So I'm sorry if you get your feelings hurt. That's not our intentions. But sometimes when you get your feelings hurt, that's how you learn.
That's very much like what I was, I totally agree with you 100% with that. Nope, completely forgot what I was gonna say. Flew right away. So Mark?
No worries, no worries.
Can I say one thing really quickly?
Yeah, please.
Just a shameless plug. I've been reading this book called How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. It's a wonderful book, and it's mainly wonderful because it really defines the terms, defines what racist is, defines what anti-racist is. And one of the things that he says that I think can help to take a lot of the pressure off of people is that racist or anti-racist, they aren't permanent labels, right? You can do something racist and then turn around and do something anti-racist. They're things that you do. So if you have said something that maybe someone has taken as racist, the anti-racist thing to do is, hey, I'm so sorry, teach me how to teach me. You know what I mean? It's not something that, I think so many people are afraid of being labeled a racist, but you can just not do that anymore. You can just stop doing it. You know what I mean? So that's another thing. It's like, there's a lot of books out there that really put these things into perspective in ways that, that I'm not an expert. I'm not prepared to do for every person. And so when I, start to receive a lot of that, like, what do I donate to? And what Black person should I, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know. You know what I mean? So I want to say.
Just jumping in on that, I one of the things that I experienced a lot of is I felt like there was this big myth going around that, you're not allowed to ask Black people about their struggles or about racism or about any of the problems or about the George Floyd. Like, you're just not allowed to talk to us about it because we're all in mourning. Like, that was one of the biggest things that I was feeling. And so then I would have some friends that would come and talk to me and be like, hey, so what do you think about? And I'm like, okay, good, we're talking about it. And one of the things I also do with my Merman side of work is I'm a social media influencer because I represent a lot of different companies and things. And with that, the mermaid industry is also a very white industry. I'm one of the leading representation mermen of color in the business. And so I've had to deal with that from that aspect of the world as well. And a lot of people were coming to me and I was openly speaking out on my social media of like, hey, this, here are some resources on this stuff, but then kind of like Zakiya said earlier, people feel like it's your job to educate them, and it's just not. But I just want to encourage everyone to know that, like she said, Google exists, but it's okay to talk to us about these things. It's not like, no, let them, they've struggled enough. No, you won't learn if you don't get it from the source itself. So don't be afraid.
Amen on that.
That's why it's also important for us, all of us, also to be open to those conversations as well. Because I feel like some white folk have this fear that I'm going to ask a question, they're going to get mad at me, and they're going to start yelling at me and cussing me out, and then I'm going to look stupid. And it's just like that assumption that's out there. And it's, yeah, I think like in our everyday everything, it's just like no, ask the questions. No, feel free. You're going to meet angry people because angry people exist all over the place, but they're not representative of all of us.
Exactly.
That is a big one to say. I just wanted to say, like, in my travails of late, I have seen lots of people blow up at questions and lots of people turtle up because they're like, crap, all I did was ask a question. So I do get in the, keeping it real part of it. Like, it will not be a shock to anyone here that outrage has become a favorite pastime of our country. And so if someone is walking on eggshells, it isn't as though, where'd you come up with this mythology that I could say something and get canceled? I mean, that's not what's happening in the world or anything. Like, it is a real thing, but it's amazing how within the Black culture itself, these our problems are not superficial. They are life and death. There are always exceptions, but we don't outrage easy because we know what bad is, right? I'm not like, oh, that wallpaper, oh my God. No, I can't pay my rent because you get there's a distinction there that is important to make, because there's a lot of people that have grievances that are kind of in the social justice zeitgeist, and it all sort of becomes one thing. And now that focus is, on the BIPOC community, I think we're getting down to things that are life-changing, historically unbalanced systems and things. And so I guess to answer that question, if I was going to throw something in there about the core problem, I think the problem is always opportunity and access. We don't have the same resources. We are the have-nots. Of course, there are exceptions, but you look at any stat sheet from anything, and it will become really horrifyingly apparent that families of color have so few chips to play poker with, right? So your potential, all of our potentials are completely filtered by the world that we live in, even if there weren't biases within the society itself. because we just couldn't get the stuff to get the training or get the this or have access to that. And so if that's the problem is that we want to create a more balanced system of opportunities, then both of those things, colorblind casting does not have room for people's individual culture and things that may come from that. Color conscious casting assumes to some extent that we are a monolith and that you can just sort of write black and then you get it, right? So like, to me, and I definitely would love to hear your feedback on this, because as a newly co-artistic director, I'm trying to make this happen. So please hit me. I feel like the answer is, for the established repertoire that we have, that we need to kill this concept that families need to look like each other. Inherently, we just open up a wellspring of, if I could go back 20 years and start my career in that world, right now would be a dramatically different time. Absolutely. Simultaneously, we get more writers of color, we get different points of view coming into the system, and that will naturally, there will be something for everyone to do, and we can get to a system of balance. I love the nodding heads, because that means I haven't been saying the wrong thing to a bunch of people. But that's where I'm trying to aim with. Any thoughts or anything you want to put on that?
Absolutely. I mean, Mark, you hit it on the head as far as throwing it out the window and saying a family does not have to look at each other, look like each other. Like I was in a show years ago where both of my parents were white in the show, and the director said, no one's going to care. We're talking about, it was Urinetown. So this was back in 2005 or so. And we're talking about a show where people are paying to urinate. So we're suspended our disbelief at the door. No one's caring about the fact that you're black, your two parents are white. If anything, it adds more to the overall nature of the show. So let's let go of that kind of thinking. Let's get to actually who's playing these roles and who's best for it, as we've been talking about.
I also think that's reflective of the real world. There are so many mixed families that exist. That is, I mean, what is theater, right? It's a mirror. It's a mirror to the audience, right? It's showing you on stage. So there are people out there who are mixed race and who have mixed families and who look different, and that is important to display, you know?
I agree. I think when I did White Christmas, my sister, Judy, was white. So we had the whole transracial adoption situation, because I was like, how can I make this work? And there was a girl in the cast, and she said, no, I was adopted by a white family. And I was like, okay, all right. However, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, that's my only concern. Like, I played Percy Jackson's mom in one of the off-Broadway productions of The Lightning Thief. Little white blonde son. It took the kids a minute. They were like, wait. And then they were on board. But I also want to leave space for those stories where it's like, I don't want to see a non-Black family in Raisin in the Sun. However, I want to see more plays that are about different experiences. So I think we do need to find a balance. I find that musical theater is heavy on either having Black people as slaves, soul singers, or singing about racism. That doesn't leave a lot of opportunity for us. So I think it makes sense that we're like, let us do some of the other roles. But I want to encourage the new generation of writers, which I know many people are writing now, write more for us. And then we won't be begging to tell predominantly white stories. And theaters, please produce these new works.
Amen.
I was gonna say, also, off of that same vein as well is, all right, so the TV show Lethal Weapon, right? I gave it a shot because I love the movies, like, that's childhood, right? So watching it, I fell in love with the fact that Murtaugh's family, we were getting such great stories from their family that had nothing to do with race. It was just family stuff. It was like you watching the father and the son having a father-son moment and dealing with growing up and what it means to, like, to be a responsible, like, man or whatever. We're seeing, like, the daughter, like, having, like, a daddy-daughter moment and whatnot. And sure, race was mentioned once, maybe, but, like, it was showing that not everything people of color talk about has to do with race. Like, we have a broad spectrum of issues, feelings, emotions, and experiences that we can talk about all of them. It's like I drove over a nail and like one of my tires are flat on the freeway and I didn't have a jack. So like that's a story that's happened to everybody. And so it's just stuff like that. It doesn't necessarily, I'm very much about like writing more for our experiences and more opportunities for that too, but also going with the experiences all over the place that doesn't really matter what you look like. Because like I could be a cop, I could be an astronaut, I could be a doctor, and all these different things. Like I don't have to be Caucasian to fulfill this role, because you guys never really talk about race. You're talking about surgery. So why do I have to look a specific way in order to fit that casting?
There's literally an artificial connection between identity and character type. That doesn't need to exist. I mean, it's literally saying, oh, well, your character trait, you're Black, so here are some things that make me, that this feels like the right place for you to be. Do you know what I mean? And the more we can destroy that concept and people see people, I really believe that all those years of watching Morgan Freeman play God and be a president and stuff just sort of worked into the brains of people, so that when Obama came along, it was like, yeah, for some reason, I kind of feel all right with it, you know? Okay, you know?
You know, I also think what's connected to this is the idea that, I've heard this, people say this a lot, but the idea that in this society, white gets to be normal. Like, I'm white, I'm normal. It's like, it's reflective of just like being human. Like I've had a lot of friends who are like, you get to be something so cool. Essentially what you're doing is you're othering. Or you're Asian American, you're Black, you're Latino. Oh, I wish I was, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm normal and you're different. You know what I mean? And so that comes across in casting as well. Well, like it's kind of like what Veronica's saying. We can't be cast as like just a normal person. You know what I mean? You have to be the person who's singing the high note, or like, you know what I mean? I even think of like flesh tone things. Like white flesh is the color of flesh. Like, I don't even think people realize how pervasive racist ideas are, and which is again why you have to consciously, you know, tackle it. But yeah, definitely we need to just also be shown as like normal, multidimensional people, you know.
Because we are.
Yes, right. All right, so this actually dovetails very deep, you know, as we go deeper into this. So this is going to start with you, Zakiya, and it's kind of a deeper question than it sounds. What does representation mean to you?
I love this question for many reasons. When I was cast in The Little Mermaid, I didn't have an agent, so I got all the calls from casting myself. And I thought that I was just going to be second sea sponge on the left, right? I didn't know that on Broadway you get wigs made. So I went in for my wig fitting, and a young Black man named Arbender Robinson was sitting next to me. And I remember the wig designer came and he said, okay, so you're going to be one of the Mer sisters. And I was like, wait, what? And gosh, I'm getting a little bit teary-eyed thinking about it. And I was like, wait, I get to be like pretty and I get to be like one of the daughters of Triton. Are you serious? And Arbender was like, girl, I'm a Prince Eric understudy. I was like, what? It was so amazing because I knew that there were going to be little Black girls in the audience. We had 2 Black Mer sisters, an Asian Mer sister, an olive-toned Mer sister, and 3 white mermaids. And I knew there was a little girl that could identify with each and every one. And I felt like that was so important. I love that that was the vision of the director. She was like, there are tons of different colors under the sea. Why would mermaids be all white? They're not even real. And on the flip side, when I did Stick Fly, I was the offstage standby for Condola, Rashad, and Tracy Toms. And what I found amazing about that play was that, oh my gosh, it's finally a play about upper middle class Black people. I get this world. Yes. Here's what was disappointing. We didn't support it.
Yeah.
I did not see a lot of, I saw some Black middle and upper middle class faces, but I didn't see as much. And it disappointed me because I was like, this is so important to be seen as people who go on vacation and have family problems. It was just a family play. Race came into it because one of the characters has a white girlfriend, and it's discussed, which it is discussed anytime you bring a non-Black person home. It's going to be a conversation. And I love the way it was handled, and it was very real, and it was very loving and amazing. But we, as the Black folks who go to theater, I'm not talking about, like, Tyler Perry has made millions, and we go out in droves to see that representation. So I would like to see more of us supporting different exhibits of Black life. And I would also like to see more white faces in the audience as well, not writing off plays as, oh, it's Black, so I don't understand it, I can't relate to it. I mean, being a Black person, if I only saw Black shows on Broadway, I would only have a handful. So to me, representation is, like we've been saying, being able to tell stories of fully formed individuals that are not centered around my Blackness, but also don't ignore it.
No, Zakiya, and you hit it on the head, especially as far as support. I'm in full agreement, because I've heard a number of people I've heard say, I'm not going to go see that particular show or that particular movie because that's not my demo, that's not my demographic, that's not my background. You know how many movies I've seen like that are not my demographic, that have nothing to do with my personal experience, because we're talking about the human experience. We're talking about things that we've all gone through, heartbreak, what have you. So it's just so much better when we have everyone going to support these things. That way we have more of those projects going, because to me, as far as representation, for me, it really means being able to go to a production and see, and be able to really have that feeling inside that this is an honest portrayal of something that I've gone through. I know somebody who has gone through this, and to specifically see my color up there, someone of my color up there going through that, and I can really relate to that. It just really gives you that warm feeling inside to see that.
You know, and also with that, it's also important because not only is representation important for, you know, people that also look like you and younger versions of you, or when you were younger and also that, but representation is important to create a layer of respect for people that are different from you. Because when you get to learn about a new culture or see something, let's go ahead and say it was the Crazy Rich Asians. That movie was practically brilliant in every single way. And for me, you know, an African-American man, to see that lifestyle and that culture and learn about that in a way that I didn't even know existed, you know, if we can allow ourselves to see that with every culture, with everything, and make sure everyone is represented, so that it doesn't come to the point where it's like, oh, I have to educate you about my Black experience. But if you would just take the time to learn from each other because of the representation that is out there, you know, we would have a much more deeper respect for humanity.
So many snaps, Keenan. Like, that hits it exactly on the head. Recently, PBS has had this series on for educators about just, you know, racial issues, representation, and one of the episodes was about media and how much media. So, you know, we're talking about theater, but theater is also a form of media. It's showing, it's entertainment. How much of it is education? If you look at the history of media, like one of the earliest films in the U.S. in the early 1900s was Birth of a Nation, right? Where it displayed all of these white men in blackface running around, kidnapping, raping white women. And like the president at the time was like, this is a very accurate history of how the Negroes have tried to assault the innocent white woman, right? And those ideas we still live with today. You know what I mean? So it just shows you how powerful representation is, because it teaches people how, you know, about different groups or people who look different from them. And I think that's why it's so important to really get it right, to really show people in their true fashion. Because I mean, I think of that example and I'm like, how many, you know, families took that in, and like how many, you know, cops go into Black areas with those same thoughts. You know what I mean? We're still dealing with this idea, these myths that, you know, all Black men are dangerous, or these myths that, you know, Black women this, or Latino women, you know. It's like representation, I think, is so important, and I really hope that, you know, even local theaters start to continue to take it and display it in its most accurate and really beautiful way.
I feel like it's also important for purposes of giving the younger generations, the idea of possibilities, and that they can do, like, if they're not used to seeing, like, in the neighborhood, people going off to be astronauts or doctors, but it's in TV, they see a Black woman president, and it's like, I could be a president. That's possible for me because she did it, so I can do it. And just opening up, like, I didn't even know, I didn't even think, my brain didn't even go in that perspective. Like, for growing up, Disney princesses, none of them look like me growing up. And like, so I ended up having to find a characteristic that I connected with. So like, Belle became my favorite princess because she liked reading books and she liked going on adventures and she didn't wait to be saved. And I'm like, I can relate to that. So I would like be wearing like Belle's dress and like all that jazz, but it was never like, oh my gosh, it's me, I'm a princess type of thing. And like, and I mean, even to this day, we still don't have an interracial like princess. The closest one I have is Moana. Like, I look like Moana, like dead on. I just have to put my hair up because I got the fro, she doesn't. Like, but like, to be able to like, to see like me in a doll form, it just like, my heart was melting. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm a princess. I look like a princess, and that just makes me super happy. And so like, to have these feelings as an adult, what that would have done to me as a child, and like how that would have inspired me to like, to see what all I can do and like, and connect, if that makes sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Representation, man, like, to me, maybe one of the biggest things with the way social justice works, and it's a natural outcome, is that it's sort of that pinch thing, right? Oh, I see somebody in this role, stuck in this role. Oh, there's another one going, oh, there's a bluebird on my shoulder. You're like, oh, crap, really? We've all been there, right? And so that's ouch. So that's bad. And we start kind of seeking out the other things that are bad. And then representation are roles that make us feel good, right? But like, if I was trying to be the android of the bunch, let's say, then I think representation is the outcome of a system that is fair. So, am I making sense?
I'm sorry, you said the android of the bunch. That took me.
Like, if I was going to be that, I was going to try to be the Spock here and go, well, you see, if we were to invoke logic, if we were in our beneficent meritocracy, right, our Gene Roddenberry world, then you would know that the pilot over there is the pilot because all of our lives depend on it, and that person is the best person at piloting on this ship. That's why they're there. And none of this stuff really matters, right? Because we live in a world where we trust the refs. We live in a world where we know that it's fair, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, the real problem is that representation is an after effect of a system that is fair. But you could go to a deck on the Enterprise and maybe it would be all Klingons. And if we were to teleport there from here with our current ideologies, you'd be like, oh, so all the Klingons got to work in engineering. Like, we might have some sort of thing about a world that has passed this problem, which means that maybe our ability to assess that problem is not as accurate as we think. And that maybe, like I said, the actual thing is fixing the equation that leads up to the answer that makes us upset, right? Because you only get so much information by looking at the answer. So to give an example, people will say, oh, there's no representation. So a lot of folks will go find students just out of college, BIPOC artists, and go, everybody's really looking for stuff now. Hey, come on and join our theater company, and let's just fill up those headshots on the screen. And then you look and you go, oh, look, that company has a lot of faces of different colors. But the actual things that led to, a dysfunctional system where they had to do that have never been addressed. You just jump to the end of the problem, stuck some faces up there. It looks representative. So like, there's maybe what I'm saying is there's a such thing as functional representation that has to do with troubleshooting the system that filters people in the first place. I don't know. Is that too deep in the weeds for you guys, or you follow?
No,
me?
I think I vibe on that. And I also think that there's something to not, what I don't want to happen is in our quest to see Black greatness and excellence on all levels, that we do forget about the struggle bus. Because look, there are various socioeconomic issues in every community. So I think of the show Shameless. I love that show. And it's like, they're just a family that's trying to make it through the day. You got all kinds of races in and out of this white family's home. You know, I would like to see it so that, yes, we do break up the system, but we also kind of have to work within it. So for the people who are the quote unquote tokens, you know who you are. You know you are the minute you get in there. So what are you going to do once you're in there? Are you going to make noise? Are you going to risk your career potentially and speak out so that they understand how problematic it is that they've got like 2 Black faces and, you know, an all white season? You know what I mean? So I think that that's, I feel like I would love to get to the Star Trek version of life, but since we're not there yet, I'm wondering, like, what other ways can we disrupt the system so that we can start to rebuild it?
I was just of a show that I've been binge watching and actually just finished is The Good Doctor. I don't know if anybody's seen that. It's like 3 seasons right now. Girl, don't play. I love that show. And like and I love the concept of like an autistic doctor, because my youngest brother is severely autistic and he's on the spectrum where he's nonverbal. And so he's going to be like living with somebody for the rest of his life. But he is so smart. And like you were talking to him, full out conversations, he completely understands what you're saying. He's just choosing to ignore you. And like growing up with that, like you're able to recognize like the different whatevers. But so my youngest brother is the so there's 3 of us, 3 kids all together. I'm the eldest, and then I have 2 brothers. So my middle brother is the darkest of all of us, and my autistic brother is the ivory one. And it's just super fascinating to see, like, we have 3 different shades in this multiracial family, of which one of us is autistic, and like we're able to do all these different representations. So The Good Doctor did a brilliant way of just like interacting. Like there were so many Hispanic people and Asian people and Black people and white people, and it wasn't until like well into like the first season that I realized this is an incredibly diverse cast. And it was like not even like oh, they're trying to be diverse. No, I just saw a bunch of good actors who were engaging and like stole the screen and like were telling a fantastic story. And it was an afterthought that I realized I can count on one hand how many white people are in this cast. It's like, that like never happens. So I feel like we need to copy and paste whatever The Good Doctor is doing to all the shows. Look for the quality and just being open to like, we're all gonna look different. Cause like I remember growing up and seeing like there's always gonna be a token, one Black person. And if there are 2 Black women, one of them has to have natural hair and the other has to have relaxed hair, because you have to be able to tell them apart, because the audience will get confused. Never mind the fact you have 3 blondes, a brunette, and a redhead on the show. Who cares? The audience is going to get confused with 2 Black women, so we have to clarify that. So I like that we're starting to shy away from that, not as fast as I would like, but we are starting to shy away. Yeah, and so the question is, how do we get there? Like you were saying, Zakiya, like how, as an actor, do I, or even as a newbie actor, if this is like your first time being on a show, I could understand the fear being there, like this is my first guest starring thing. This is my paycheck, like for my rent, and I've got bills to pay. Do I make waves for a bigger like cause to open a door so other people have opportunities, or do I keep it quiet until like we go into syndication and I know I'm good on a paycheck and then start making waves in hindsight? But then it's like hypocritical, and so it's like I can see the struggle bus. I love that word. I learned that this year and I love it so much. That it's a real struggle bus for sure.
Oh, So we have definitely gotten, I'm starting to see chat and the question and answer stuff popping up there. So we've definitely struck some gold on that. So let's do this just to keep it moving. We'll get to our last question here, and then we'll start going through and taking a look at some of these questions, and we can file them to us, right, from the audience. Okay, so this is kind of a deep one, Anthony. This will head to you.
Okay.
So everyone wants to kind of make a change, right? We have this downtime because of the pandemic, and everyone's attention is on this issue right now, but we have been down this road to some extent before, right? So what can we do this time? What can we do now to make long-lasting change?
Yeah, I love this question, mainly because, you know, what we've seen in American history is that we're going over around and around to the same racial issues every 20 years or so. You know, we're having it now, we're having a racial awakening now. We had it in the 90s, Rodney King, 60s before that. It's kind of coming around every year, and it's because I think there's a focus on, you know, and this is an incorrect focus, but there's a focus on Black people taking care of the problem. Like it's a Black culture or behavioral problem. So like, if you say, for example, Black people are in poverty, it's like, well, if they just got jobs, if they just did this, if they pulled up their pants. I think the long-lasting change that we need will come from realizing that those accusations don't address the policies that put Black people in inequity in the first place. So I think we can apply that to casting and to theater in the same way that, you know, I've even heard like, well, like Black people don't, you know, they don't take tap class early enough. They don't do, you know, it's a lot of like behavioral things that, you know, and in this book, Ibram Kendi talks about how behavior and culture are two different things, right? So we have to really, I think, focus on policy. And I think one of the policies that we can start to implement is just being more conscious about casting. This is a policy that will create actual change. Yeah.
Gotcha. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the other, oh, sorry. You can go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, so I was just saying that really one of the things that we were talking about earlier is asking the question and not being afraid to. That just needs to continue happening, and understanding that you might not like the answer, and that somebody might not answer you, and that it's okay in either case, and that you should also realize that you're gonna get frustrated. And it is frustrating. You should allow yourself to be frustrated by the answers you're going to get, the process that you have to go through in order to rectify this, because we're not talking about something that just started. We're talking about something that's been a system that's been implemented over centuries. That's been we're trying to dismantle here by these actions, by asking these questions, by doing this work, by performing this outreach is the other thing. Like getting out into the communities and saying like, hey, we have these opportunities that are available, not just in your own circle, but outside of that. I know that a lot of theater companies have been doing a great job of that recently. They've been doing a better job of that, and Morgan-Wixson included. There's been a big effort specifically on that outreach recently, which is great to see, and just about continuing on with that and continuing to ask the questions that are gonna move this conversation forward.
I agree. I would say no. I say no all the time. If an audition comes in, I read all the stuff before I confirm or deny. And I'm gonna keep it real. I know that I could have, let's just say I would have been in a different space in my career if I would have said yes to certain roles that I felt were offensive. You know, it's like, yeah, do you give up some stuff? Like, and it's no judgment on the actresses who take them. Everybody has different boundaries, but you have to start thinking about, well, what do I feel inside? Will I be able to look at myself in the mirror if I take this role? And it's no judgment if you did that in the past. You too can make a change. It's not just white people that need to change. Black folks, you can start to take control of your career. You are in control of the roles you accept and the places you go into. And also, keep making noise. Because the thing is, once we stop talking about it, everyone's like, okay, that's over with. But let's talk about gay marriage. Let's talk about sexual harassment in the workplace. Things were done because they didn't take no for an answer. people organized and fought and kept speaking up about it until we had policies put in place. And I feel like as Black people, sometimes we're like, can we, it's starting to get uncomfortable. And I feel like the white people are getting frustrated. So let's just stop. We have to make ourselves and our feelings and our careers a priority. And we don't do that very often. So I was excited to see a lot of Black Broadway Tony Award winners starting to organize, starting to speak out. So we just got to keep making noise until change actually happens. Because if we stop, nobody else is going to continue the conversation. They just won't.
There is a bit of a numbers game that plays into being Black in comparison to other parts of the struggle, because if we all made the same noise, you can look at like the breakdown of who voted for Trump and who voted for Obama. You could just remove all of the Black votes, and none of those things would have changed the outcome of the election. And even with the representation that's on those charts itself isn't accurate, because you can gerrymander in such a way that you can actually minimize even that tiny bit of it. But there isn't really it's harder to gerrymander around the other issues, because people, other identities don't just all live in one cluster necessarily. Like, it's an easier thing to do on racial bounds. Someone was about to say something.
Actually, I had one thing, piggybacking off of what Zakiya was saying. I think it's also up to white actors to do the same thing as well when they're being offered a role that is not their ethnicity or whatever, and being like, okay, look, this is a great story and a great role, but I am not Asian. I am not 3/4 Asian. I am not Persian. I am not whatever. So I'm gonna step aside and give this to an actual actor who represents that ethnicity, because we're seeing so many celebrities right now back and back and back just saying, we're apologizing for doing this. Jake Gyllenhaal apologized for doing Prince of Persia. I remember when the movie came out and I went, wait, Jake Gyllenhaal is playing Persian? How does that, I don't or like with Ghost in the Shell and Scarlett Johansson playing a very obviously Asian character from a pre-established game. And it's like, I get it to one point that you were an actor being given and offered a role that looks super cool and you were so excited to do it. But they were already at points in their career where it's like, you can pass on this and like you're still gonna be able to drive your 2 Maseratis to your private island and be okay. And it's like, so it's not just like Black actors. It has to be all actors just being cognizant and aware and going, look, for me, I'm like, I shouldn't play this role. You need a darker skinned actress. I can't represent that for you. So I'm going to step aside. Or if they want a lighter, or if they want an all African-American woman, I'm like, well, I definitely can't do it because I'm mixed, right? But likewise, I would like to see more mixed roles. That's a whole other soapbox, but continue.
Anyone else before we open this up?
I just want to say I agree. I think that the work of anti-racism is continuous, and hopefully people in the audience don't think that it's like a one-time fix. It's something that you continuously have to keep an eye on. It can't be like, well, I gave money to this charity, racism is over. You know what I mean? It's pervasive. So it has to be a thing that you're running, if you're a part of a theater company and you're choosing shows, you're running that show through the filter of anti-racism. Does this show uphold racist structure? Does this show present racist ideas? I just think it's important for people to realize that it's not a one-time fix. So if you're just joining the anti-racism party, welcome. It's been, hundreds of years, welcome. But keep going. Black and white people together, everyone together. We have to be moving forward in the same way.
All right.
Same idea as homelessness. Like, just because you threw money at it decades ago, you notice that we still got homelessness around. Like, you're surrounded by the problem still. Mm-hmm. And your check 20 years ago obviously hasn't done anything.
I mean, honestly, what we're trying to do is move an equilibrium point, right? Because anything that's continuing to go obviously has an equilibrium point, and moving that to something that's more fair requires
work.
a very nuanced approach to change it. Otherwise, you just push something and then you create an equal response that pushes it right back. And you go, what happened? We did all this stuff. And we're right back where we started. And it's like, we got to play chess, not checkers. Like, problems are a little bit more, they're more nuanced now, right? It's not so easy to be like, I'm sitting on this bus in a section and I'm not supposed to, right? It's way more subtle. So we maybe need to consider evolving our tools at fighting it as well, because those same old tools are not going to be as effective at demonstrating these things. So I want to dive into these. I'm going to go, I see this one because I heard it early on, and because it said the Music Man, and my heart goes, I guess we were 1 week from auditioning when the pandemic went, no. So it says, since we're hoping to produce the Music Man, I was wondering if it would be positive to cast Harold Hill with a Black actor. Since he's a con man, fraud, and very charming liar, would that present some issues? So I will say that as the person who was directing that show, that I was actively courting a session singer friend of mine who is Black to play Harold Hill. And in the descriptions that I put there, I said, in my way of trying to separate it from an identity and let them know the character and what I needed them to do in the story, I said Cab Calloway, Steve Martin from Leap of Faith were my two examples of the heart that I was looking for, that kind of person who could just kind of lead, you know, that band leader, con artist, you know, super slick. And so once you see two options that aren't the same, then what I must be looking for isn't superficial. It's the things that are similar between them. Yeah, it's not obvious. In a million years would I never told from someone, because I thought it would make on, like, if someone doesn't want to play a role, that is them. But it's your choice. I'm not taking, like, Tiffany Haddish goes, sorry, you can't play Sassy Black anymore. We've decided that's bad. First of all, like, that's my game. Back off. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like say that one more time.
It's like she feels personally attacked.
Right. So it's like
that's me.
Let people express what they want to express, but it's just, the problem is we've had to express things because of someone else's desires, not because of our own. So I don't think it's ever wrong to let someone play something that makes them happy.
And it's also a leading iconic role. So I think that's the difference. You know what I mean? Like Harold Hill, that's a legendary character. Also, there are Black people who are con artists.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, behavior and culture are different. Just
Yeah.
because you're playing a con artist doesn't mean that you represent all Black people.
Like,
Yes.
in case it's subtle, never in 1,000 years would I ever go, you know what? You shouldn't play this, because people will think it's bad. It will never be a word you will hear come out of my mouth.
The rest of your casting diverse. Don't make just the one guy, your one Black person, the villain in an all-white cast. Then obviously everyone's gonna be like, oh. But like if he's like one of like 6, like playing different roles all throughout the play, then like it's not an issue because it's evenly dispersed.
Right. And so one of the challenges with that, just carrying that thread, was as we were, part of the reason we're paying so much attention to the write-ups for the roles is because we've all heard that, all ethnicities welcome. And we all instantly go, yeah, right? We tune that out in 2 seconds, right? So how do I word this different? And part of it was saying, look, we've done everything we can to remove all those filters that you're used to running into in this system to make this the most fair process you will ever go through. But our cast will only be as diverse as the turning. So come here, kick butt, let's breathe new life into this old classic. That was the whole vibe. Let's do this. And Iowa could look like We Are the World. Like that's it.
I will also, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just I would be curious to see what a show would look like if in a breakdown, no ethnicities were listed at all. Like you just have like the age breakdowns and then like the character breakdown itself. Like I would just be curious to see what the turnout would be. I'm not saying that this will definitely work. I would just be curious as to an experiment how that would.
People would still like filter themselves out of self-preservation. They'd assume the default mode was white, and they would,
because that's been the default.
Yeah.
If it's not listed, it's usually white. But I also want to say, Black folks, stop counting yourself out. If you want to, I love going into an audition and they think, ooh, she's gonna riff. And I give you like a nice whistle tone.
Right.
And like support and legit rich tones. Because I was actually in final callbacks for The Music Man that they did. I'm still learning the theaters. Patrick Cassidy was the artistic director.
5-star theatricals.
Thank you. I was in final callbacks and Patrick and I did Superman together. And he hit me up. He was like, your energy for who we've already cast as Harold Hill would have been too much, but you were great. And I love that. I'm like, that I can accept because I do have strong alpha energy. Bringing me in, I did notice I was the only Black girl there, but Blackters, live your lives. Don't wait to be invited. Yes, there may be change in the breakdowns, but also don't count yourself out.
And also your team, like your representation, make sure they're on the same page as you. Like that they're sending you out for everything. Because I had a manager when I basically had no auditions whatsoever, and I had to have a phone call with them saying, hey, I just want to see, is there anything else I should be doing to help you out? Like what are you submitting me for? And his words were, oh, I'm sending you out for everything you write for, young and Black.
It's like, right.
Mark, I just wanted to say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
I just want to say, I really appreciate you taking the time to really craft a breakdown that really speaks to people and is really inviting in a way. It makes me think of, and this is so egregious, and this is a completely different conversation, but it makes me think of colorism, because I don't know if you guys remember for the Straight Outta Compton audition, they were auditioning for like, they said like young hot women. It had groups A through D, and A was light skin. I mean, it's literally in descending order. A, light skin, almost white honeys. B, mediums to C, dark medium. D, dark. You know what I mean? And I, it's just a problem that I feel like is it happens in you know, white casting as well, but it's also something that we as Black people can take on as well, because that was cast by Black people, you know what I mean? And to have this hierarchy that is telling you what color, and the whole point is that the lighter you are is better. So that's still adhering to white supremacy, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The colorism that I know a lot of different communities face, but that's a whole nother conversation.
I think we could literally dive into that in a completely new channel, because that's a subject that is not just in our culture, but in all cultures. You know, the lighter skin tone, especially in Asian cultures and countries and things. I mean, like, that's literally something that we can spend the next 4 hours discussing alone.
I remember that, like, I studied Japanese for a long time, and I was dating a girl, and she was talking about how, oh yeah, I can't be outside too long. I can't look like I got a tan, because then they'll think I'm not doing anything. And there were so many like things that were in that where I was like, what? And then you start hearing like an entire other, like a whole other experience of ways in which people are filtered or aimed to fit some sort of a one size fits all mold, where you're just like, wow, this is a universal problem in every culture. Someone finds a way to say, this is how you should be, and if you don't fit into this, then we're going to give you flack for it.
Or in like their skincare lines, there's a bleaching agent in it to lighten their skin. In their makeup, they make themselves look as doll-like, porcelain doll-like as humanly possible. And that's it for and accepted. And I'm like, that's right, you're right. It's a completely different conversation. Change. Get another question, Mark.
I'm trying to go, right? These are all so deep. I'm trying to be like, people have been asking questions and I didn't see the sheet, my bad. And so I'm starting here toward the end, but I want to go back and catch folks because they asked first. But anyway, this is one of the ones saying about, we find it difficult to cast people of color because they don't come to auditions. And that is a thing. I have personally filtered myself out of auditions. You look at something and I see, oh, families, oh, this, oh, that, and that has dinged me so many times that I find myself, my autopilot says, you know what, there's enough rejection in this world, let's not do that. But I also don't want to add any self-fulfilled prophecy. So whenever I catch it, I try to make myself go, but it's rough. Keenan, you were saying?
You know, I really think, where do I want to go with this? I really think that companies just need to hold themselves more accountable as far as doing the work that it takes to make sure that people know about the audition, because you can't assume that we all have the same way of going out about finding out about jobs in general. And I say this with both my experience as an auditionee and as someone on the other side of the table and watching how these companies are putting these breakdowns out and they're expecting, oh, we're going to do this and they're going to show up. And it's kind of like, you know, then when no one does show up, they go, oh, well, no one showed up, so it's okay that we cast it this way. When what you have to then do is go, okay, no one showed up, but we need to stay true to the integrity of the piece or what we want to do, or if we want to cast diverse, whatever that is, what can we now do to try and get people, you know, more people of color or more, you know, different body types or whatever it could be to come out and show up for these calls? Do I have to put in some of this? Do I have to reach out to some friends and be like, hey, you know, can you check this breakdown? How did I word that? Was that a turnoff for something, you know? But because I've had to do this myself and when casting and say like, oh, you know, I have a bunch of friends that would come out for this. Let me put this out there and say, hey, is this show you'd be interested in coming out for? We'd love to see you and so forth. There was another point I wanted to make on this. And I'll just talk about it. For example, I was gonna work on a show that was actually gonna happen this year. And without giving too much away, because I don't want to put the company out there or throw them on blast or anything, but it is a show that is a predominantly white musical, and they wanted to do it with an all-black cast. And I was in love with the idea. So I said, okay, so what are you gonna do to find the people to audition, especially because it is in an area that is not a lot of people of color exist as far as where they live. You know, if they were to do this, these people are all going to be brought in for this project. And they were like, oh, well, we're just going to, you know, post the audition notice. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Well, I was like, well, when did you plan to post this? Oh, closer to auditions. I was like, no, you need to start making this noise now. Make the noise and because let me tell you something, the Black theater community, we all talk. So it's going to get out there and see like, okay, are you going to go out for this? What's going to happen? You know? So we need to make the noise now, and you are going to get both responses, a positive response and a negative response. But if you've made the choice to cast the show in this particular way, you have to be able to take it. So it's really just a matter of companies holding to their own and doing the work to get the people to come out there and or find the people.
And trying new platforms and avenues that they've never done before, such as word of mouth and going like hey, you know a lot of actor friends, I'm looking for this demographic, like please, here's the notice, send it, put it on blast to all everywhere you know, and do it for multiple people. And then once you start doing that a couple of times, then all those actors are now on your radar and vice versa. So it becomes easier to stay in contact with them for future projects. You don't have to work as hard. You still have to do the work, but you don't have to work as hard. You start at the momentum, the snowball effect.
Yeah, I also think that, you know, sometimes Black people have a certain experience that can prevent them from coming out to certain theaters or certain areas. Like when I first started at my community college, they did Aida, and lots of Black people showed up. Lots and lots and lots of Black people showed up. And was a single Black person cast? No. It was an all-white cast of Aida, and everyone was spray tanned. You know what I mean? So like, how do you then go from that experience to be like, oh, well, I'll go back to that theater? You're not, you know what I mean? So, you know, there could be a number of reasons. Yeah, I meant to bring up that story earlier. That was the most egregious thing I've seen, you know, yeah.
Let me sneak in, man, so many of these questions are like perfect topics to be for an entire discussion. I'm trying to be fair and bouncing around, but also I'm like, all right. So this one's pretty straightforward, and then I'm going to move over here. So says there are so many mixed families on TV commercials. Why doesn't it happen on stage? Veronica, just kidding. No,
I can't speak to the theater world. That would be Zakiya most likely.
Save the universe for us. It's on you.
Wait, I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
So there are many mixed families on TV. We see it all the
Mhm.
time. Why not on stage as much?
Theater is very far behind TV and film, mostly because it takes longer to create new work. You know, a lot of TV and film, like Issa Rae is part of the reason I moved out here. Blackish is part of the reason why I moved out here. And theater is kind of old guard. There's an old group of predominantly white producers that don't really want to change because they don't have to. So that's the thing. It's like they go where the money is. And right now their sweet spot is on Broadway, usually like 50 to 60-year-old white women from Long Island and New Jersey.
Mm.
That's the target audience. That's who buys the expensive seats, except for Hamilton or except for The Color Purple. So I think that's why you haven't necessarily seen a lot of mixed couples on stage, unless it's a musical about interracial relationships, like Memphis. I would love to see, I was married to a white dude. I would have loved to have seen a musical that's not like Aida, where dude's enslaving me and I have Stockholm syndrome and I fall in love with him after a kiss. You know, so I think that, again, it's going to be the next generation of playwrights. And I think we need more producers of color, more young, wealthy people who want to make a change. Start getting on these creative teams. If you put your money behind it, they will change.
Yeah, amen. And if you are a writer or producer out there, send stuff to Michael. Send stuff to me. We are trying very hard to do some things, but we need some things in order to do those things. So, what were we going to say?
I started seeing on that I started seeing interracial couples and families in commercials like over the past like 5 years. And I think the first time I had ever seen one, I was in tears. Like, and I did it, like, it caught me off guard. Like, I was doing something and I looked up and I went, that looks like my parents. And then saw a little baby and I'm like, this little baby me. And it was a cereal commercial. And I was like, it was like puppies and kids always get me. But then like an interracial family, I was just like, oh my gosh, you don't understand like how important representation is until you don't have it. And then you have one moment when you do, and you're like, this is a completely new feeling. Why can't we do more of this? And so now it's like anytime I see an interracial family at all, Black, Asian, like Hispanic, I'm just like melting pot, love it, oh my gosh. And like the commercial world is just now getting into it. TV has been doing really good. Movies need to start getting their shit together a little bit more. And apparently so does the theater world. So it's like we're like in different like levels right now.
It's crazy.
It goes to what
Styrofoam. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, it goes to show what we were saying about making it normal. Because every time, like we talked about with Memphis and Aida, like every time we see these things, even in a lot of movies too, sometimes it's the stories about, okay, what's the struggle of me bringing this white man home? Or, and how the struggle side behind these interracial families and couples versus just, no, this just happens to be one that's normal and there's no issue. That just happened, and that's just not the focus of the story. It's just like, that exists, but the main point of the show, movie, whatever, is about something completely different. But that's just a normal aspect of the story that we're telling. And I just think we need to see more of that. That's going to help normalize it as well.
Yeah, like it's funny that in theater we have a built-in suspension of disbelief, right? And that so when people are on stage, there's a piece of styrofoam that's a tree, there's a projection over there, there's you're watching a thing, but God forbid the two people that have different melanin levels should be brother and sister or husband and wife or something like that. It is absurd that that's been hung on so long. Especially, there was a while where I was really studying some of the experimental 60s theater as we were going into a production of Hair, which is its own conversation. And it was funny how anyone, the Black woman was playing Abraham Lincoln, like it really was Hamilton, like a zillion years ago. And then you juxtapose that with 2020 and you're like, So how did we go backwards in some ways on that? How did that happen? But it's, yeah.
I feel like there's almost this with all the new platforms online, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, coming out with all this original content, there almost seems to be more of a freedom for them to just like throw traditions out the window, like casting all over the place. And it's just like, they're like, this is a new thing, new world, let's just attack it wholeheartedly. Because like the reboot of Lost in Space, I haven't seen the second season, but I loved the first season. And one of the big things I loved is the eldest daughter is Black. And they never once talk about it until like the fourth episode. And it's just such in passing that if you like hiccup, you're gonna miss it. And it was just a given. Like the sister dynamic, the brother dynamic, the parent dynamic, it was a family. The one daughter just happens to look different from everybody else, but it's so obvious that they are each other's family. And then there was this one line where he was like, wait, so he's your dad? And she's like, he came into the party a little late, okay? And then they just moved on to continue with the rest of the plot. And I was like, thank you. Oh my gosh, very much need more of that. Yes.
I saw another person going for my Star Trek future. I knew there was more of us out there, yes. Let's see. Oh, here's a fun one, and it sort of dovetails into a different one. I am white, and I played Anita, side story, 20 years ago. Can I keep that on my resume? Let's say, do not take the shot. Like, empirically, I could say, why are we pretending like something didn't happen? But if you don't need to have that in your resume, why pick a fight and cause a problem that you don't need? That thing has caused damage. Someone sees that, and everything is going to be tarnished by that.
Right.
Don't give us a reason not to hire you.
You have to remember that your resume is a representation of you. So what is it that you want to represent when you walk into that audition room? You know, if you're going to come and audition for me and I see that, you know, I'm like, oh, she played Anita in West Side Story. Why does she feel like I needed to know that still? How is that prevalent to now? How is that important? That's not showing me her skill base off of what I think need to see for her right now. And so you have to remember that your resume is important. You know, sometimes even, especially if you have a resume that's longer than it could be, you can change it up depending on the show that you're entering for. Because again, it's representing your skill set and what you want to present for the people in the room for the show that they're casting. And I don't think that having Anita on a resume will ever benefit you in this day and age.
Right. So it's like, if we were in the future and all the wounds were healed and everyone could just do what they wanted to do because there wasn't some great historic inequity going on, boy, I would love to be there, but we are not. And so we have to do what we do here.
Exactly. Especially since we're talking about a show that is addressing that specific inequity between these two characters. So if you have that on your especially if it's something that you played 20 years ago, let your talent speak for you now. Let what you've been doing in the 20 years since, or maybe before that, speak for you at this point, as opposed to that role that might not have best suited you speaking for you before you even get in the room.
All right, there's a deep one here. I'm going to try and get kind of to the heart of it. You know what? I'm going to just read it because it's very well written. Oh, Nico, hey. I'm glad I said nice things about it since you're my friend. Okay, so I have a question about specificity in casting notices when it comes to color-conscious casting. In another town hall I watched, a darker-skinned Black actress said that she was more likely to attend a casting call if they said outright that they are looking for a darker-skinned Black actress to fill a specific role. Conversely, I've seen a popular regional theater company specify they are looking for a Black actress to fill a leading role, and then spend a huge amount of marketing efforts to talk about how amazing and progressive they were for being the first company to cast this role non-traditionally. From a casting perspective, how do you navigate the line between elevating voices and performative tokenism? Glad I read that in its entirety because it's a good question. Great question.
It's a very good question. I would love to tackle that first because when I was cast as Lois Lane, I was not in any of the promotional materials. Black Lois Lane, opposite Matt Cavanaugh as Superman, Patrick Cassidy as Max Menken. I did not get to do any of the TV interviews. And it was a missed opportunity. My whole thing is this: don't spotlight a black actress because she's black. Spotlight her because she's playing the role. That's it. Treat it like any other leading role, right? And for black actresses who are counting themselves out, I don't know what to tell you. If you don't go, you'll never know. If I would have turned, I would not have a career if I waited for them to say, we want a dark-skinned black actress. I'm 5'10". I walk in the room with a certain amount of authority, and that's just who I am. I'm not going to count myself out because the waiting room is full of 5'3" redheads. I'm going there, I'm gonna kill it, I'm gonna leave, and if you're down with it, you hire me. So just twofold: black dresses, go to everything you want to go to, and casting people, theater companies, treat us like normal people. Do a normal ad campaign. It doesn't help me for you to say, look, we cast a black actress. No, it helps me to see that you're like, look at our leading lady. I'll say that when I did White Christmas, they did a great job of spotlighting me and Judy because we were the stars of the show. You know what I mean? So I think that's when it rings as untrue, when it's like we're doing shows with mostly black casts that usually aren't. Like we get it.
There's a thing that happens when one of the reasons I like the idea of Music Man and I lean away from struggle things, even though there is a place, I don't want to pretend like that doesn't need to be said, but I'm putting my focus toward the other. It's because when you're in a play that isn't about race, then there's no question about why you're in there. Like you don't have that, am I someone's merit badge? Am I here so that people, they put the lamb's blood over the window and the angel of death will not get, like, is this like, why am I in here? And because that can really you work so hard at your craft and you want to enjoy your successes. And in this world, nobody can. If you're white and you get cast, you're wondering, is this because of privilege? Should I not be here? If you're black and you're in this specific role, did you put me in here because you wanted to not get dinged by the neighbors? Is all my work really paid off? Like, the thrill of victory is a little muted for all. And then when people are constantly meddling in the outcome to make the answer something that looks good, then the outcome's less and less decided by what you brought to it, which just, like, I could take going into a situation. I think of it like martial arts. You go, you kick my butt. I'm like, you just showed me something that is never going to happen to me again. I go back, I clean that up, I come back, let's try that again. I can deal with that. But you go there and your skills have nothing to do with why you didn't get it. When they go, okay, you see someone, oh, we got our black person, so we got to check another box. And I'm like, so it doesn't even matter? Like, this is just waiting for someone to decide when you're worthy to get the opportunity higher? Like, that's really taken a lot of my mojo in this, and it takes a lot to try and stay on.
I have a question though.
Please.
Is that something we can really hold other people responsible for?
Which part specifically?
How we feel once we're in the role.
Oh,
like,
no.
I'm like, just something you said just kind of triggered something. And I feel like, I don't want white people wondering, did I get this just from privilege? I want white people to say, if you look around and you see that it's an all white cast, ask those questions. If I'm the only black person in an all white production, I don't have time to think, did you just hire me because I'm black? Because I know I'm awesome. Now, was that easy to get to? No. But I feel like there is a line between what we can expect theater companies and casting directors to do for us that we have to do for ourselves. Does that make sense?
I got you. I guess the point I'm trying to eliminate, I get you, and I utterly 100% agree with what you're saying. I'm thinking more about the fact that the concept of social currency, right? That I'm going to get more woke points because I did this in my casting thing, makes people, like, when you go into a show, it can take away some of the joy of getting there. I'm not suggesting that we need to change that. I'm suggesting that we need to get to a point where our abilities are what got us in the room, and that we are not just trying to manipulate the end of result so that it looks fair and that people give us points for it, but rather we work to make the front end of the equation fair so that people will gain trust in the refs and we all swing with all we got. And then when we get to the outcome, we can live with the result, because now we finally restored faith that the system isn't slanted against us.
Can I throw something in there? Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say, can I throw something in there?
Please.
What do you say to a company that goes, hey, historically, we have not been casting in an equitable way. We really want to make some changes. We're starting to make changes. They start to cast people of color. They start to really, kind of go through that anti-racist lens I was talking about. Is it bad for the company to be like, we want to show people what we're doing, that we've changed? Like, where is the line of like, look at us now, and like, I genuinely want to show people, you know what I mean? That's my question for all of you.
Like, I feel like that it shouldn't even be an issue. Like, we're trying to do a lot of things at the theater company that I'm at, Sacred Fools, and we're not wasting a lot of time telling everybody about all the things that we're doing. We're spending that time trying to do them, right? But there is a point where you need to know that this opportunity is here, or no one's going to show up to take advantage of this opportunity. So as long as the stuff that we're putting out there is functional for the purpose of making sure that people know that we've got things that can help and that we're working on a system, so come here and get a fair shake, that kind of a thing. I feel like anytime it's functional, it makes sense. But if it's not functional, but it's really there just so that people will stop banging on your door. Am I on? Yeah. Cool. Anyone? I like all the nodding. Yeah.
No, it's true. It's basically what you're saying. Let your work speak for you. Let the fact that let your casting notices, what am I trying to say? Your casting announcements. Let all of that work for you. Like you're showcasing the fact that you have these people. You don't have to make a specific point to say, look at all the people of color we have in this cast. As long as you're doing that work, it'll show for you. It'll speak for you. People will recognize that, and people will buy into your current strategy more if you're doing that and not making a lot of noise for it, because then it comes off self-serving once you start doing that, once you start turning on the faucet. So just, let it speak for itself.
So we are hearing a bit of the, if we were doing our Academy Award speech, we'd begin hearing the music begin to play in the back. No. So I wanna try and get to maybe one or two more. We'll stay pretty concise. I know we had mentioned that as long as we get done by Monday morning, we're good. But in reality, maybe we'll get toward the end. And you know what? I really love, honestly, I really love this group of minds talking about stuff, because I feel like there's a huge, maybe one big point here is the huge amount of diversity of experience in this panel. And if you were to just look, you might think that, oh, I bet they all had a similar path getting from A to B. But after this conversation, if there's anything, it's like, wow, okay, so there's a million different points of view within this, and there's no such thing as what Black is. I know that's okay. So, which leads us into, as someone who is multicultural, biracial as well, how have you navigated people who? Okay, when people say behind your back that you aren't Black enough or invalid, ignore your experience as a multicultural human, especially in the theater community. I find that since I can't fit into a box for those individuals, wow, my identity becomes diminished or lesser so they can feel comfortable with my existence. Wow. Right. Because when you put people in a box and then you start to realize that people, like every time you try to categorize everything, then there's a platypus somewhere. Oh, well, crap. I mean, the world is a continuum. And so when you put people in a box, you leave out everyone who's in the cracks of it, right? Anyone?
It's difficult because, as one that has some racially ambiguous undertones to my outward appearance, as a mix, being African American and Native American, it's I've encountered a lot of times where it's like, okay, well, he's of color, so he'll work. And then I've also encountered like, well, it's not exactly what we were hoping. Can you, give us a little bit more ethnicity to it or whatever, or
Then
what are we going to do with your hair for this one? This one it needs to be straight. This one can you furl your hair? Um, it's something that a lot of us have to deal with no matter what shade you are. Because it's just part of that stereotypical aspect of the business. And it is not easy. I'm sure we've all had these struggles of being told, you're too black or you're not black enough. And again, we're all different shades in this panel, and everybody's nodding their head. So I'm seeing it's, it's a thing. And it just becomes a way of representing your true self, still finding a way to bring what you could bring to the table. And it's going to be received in different ways from production team, audience members, whatever, but you still have to stay true to yourself. In these discussions and in these situations that come about. And they'll keep happening until we fully change the system of the way the mind is working. I don't think there's an easy answer to that, to ask, say, how do you deal with that? Because there is no easy answer. We all have taken that differently. But the best thing that I can personally say is just stay true to yourself and stay strong.
Amen. I wonder, Michael, you can just hear me. There are so many awesome question and answers and comments that we definitely won't be able to get to, but they are perfect seeds for future conversations. Is there a way to save these things so that we can see them later? Because I don't want them to go away.
That's what I've been copying and pasting to a piece of paper.
Oh, sweet.
And that's why I said to you, we'll do part 2 in the future, because this conversation has been amazing. Like we said, it just flew by because it's been 2 hours, and I don't know that it seemed like that to anyone. And it's been really enjoyable. But there's 9 more questions to be asked. So I think we'll cultivate another session for those questions. And if any of you want to come back, or we'll get other panelists or a mishmash, that would be great.
Yeah.
Can I just say thank you, first of all, Michael, for inviting us all to do this? Because echoing what Marc said, it's been so great sharing the space with such incredible minds and experiences that everybody brought to the table. And I'm even learning more from hearing other people discuss things and talk. And it's just been so enriching and enlightening, and felt like a safe space to have this conversation. So I just wanted to thank you for setting that up and bringing us all on board.
Thank you for that. I will tell you that when the murder of George Floyd happened, the DEI committee at the Morgan-Wixson was like you talked about in the beginning of the conversation. What do we do? What can we do to make a difference? What can we do to make change? What does the theater need to do? And one of the things we talked about was giving a place for voices to be heard and raised, and the conversation to be had. And so if we can do that through our community discussions, then that will make us all happy. And so thank you. It's not just me, it's the DEI and the board of Morgan-Wixson. And so keep it up.
Well, I will jump in on that too and say that of all the things that happened, like getting a chance to direct Music Man, like the other projects that we're doing were lovely and they were wonderful, but they were definitely there because they wanted to have a Black director direct those particular pieces because of the content that was in them. But the Music Man represents a win that I can just feel good about. And I really felt very good about the way that we could reimagine that, and actually, rather than working to divide people more, we could bring people together and we could all just play and get lost in this play that was just really about people letting go of those like structural things that you're supposed to do, and just being free to be yourself. Like it was just that opportunity meant a tremendous amount. And so thank you for that. Damn you, pandemic.
And I'm really grateful to each and every one of you for saying yes to this conversation. I got to meet Veronica and Anthony, which has been amazing. Keenan and I have been together since you're in town. When in the show, you changed your hair like 5 times, different styles. And Flowers and I go back many, many years at the Morgan-Wixson. So, and then of course, as Zakiya mentioned, friends with my husband, and I love when she comes over and visits, properly distanced. Very properly distanced. Anyway, once again, if anyone in our virtual audience has any additional questions or ideas for further sessions, you can send them to ideas@morgan-wixson.org and let us know. And then don't forget that coming up, we have 3 more community discussions getting ready. Initiative for Actors of Color, Hair, Makeup, and Body Presentation. It's really going to be a great community discussion about what it says, hair, makeup, and body presentation. And then we have the Evolving Approach to Social Justice in Theater, when Marc is going to be back to lead that. And then Code Switching, which is really important as well, will be in October. So please come back. You can find the links on our webpage, on our emails that we send out, and also on our Facebook and Instagram social media stuff. Anyway, panel, thank you so very much. This is really, really great. I didn't want to keep you till morning, but we could have with all these questions. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I will, since we can't see the attendees, I will applaud for them. So thank you guys very much, and have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Nice to meet everybody.
So nice to meet you.
Take care.
Bye.